Good afternoon, everybody. Well done to those who were playing golf, not those who were playing with Neg and I. We spent most of our time looking for balls and fishing for balls. Anyway, welcome to Valencia. I think, as most of you know, we have very close associations with our sister associations, ALSMA in Asia and LSA in North America. And it's always nice to hear what's going on in the rest of the world. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker for this conference, who is the president of the Local Search Association from Dallas, Texas, Mr. Neg Norton. Wow. Careful, Neg, people are throwing the furniture at you.
That's for the next conference in Greece.
So whoever shot 72 is pretty damn amazing. We had to give this guy a round of applause. I mean, that's really impressive. Anyway, thank you very, very much for inviting me, Kimberly. It's nice to see some familiar faces and to reconnect with some old friends. So appreciate the opportunity to be here. So I'm going to talk today about something that we've launched at the LSA called the Tech Adoption Index. And that's going to be my topic of today. And so we believe that the SMB adoption of cloud-based services is going to drive the next level of disruption in the local market. We think it's going to be a really, really big deal in terms of disruption in the local market. And so we've built a practice around it. So we call it the Tech Adoption Index. It's actually, it's probably more aptly described as more of a program or an initiative. We've got a research component. We've got a database, much like a Crunchbase database of these cloud-based service companies. We're looking to actually get some real market signals to mix in with the proprietary research that we do. We built an analyst practice around it, so there's a multi-dimensional aspect of what this is all about. But anyway, so I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to give you a glimpse of what this is all about. Okay, so delighted to have two companies as our charter sponsors. DexYP and Google are the charter sponsors for this. We're actually selling subscriptions to the service that's available now. And we launched the service in June. Really, really good economic interest in the service so far. So delighted about the start we've got. So here's just a little bit about the context of the survey that we fielded, and I'll be talking about some of the results, from this particular survey. So we started the survey in May of 2017. We had 1,000 completions amongst SMBs, and we define an SMB as any small business having less than 100 employees, and we did it across 5 fairly broad verticals. So these are the 5 relatively broad verticals that a lot of our members do business currently in today, okay? And so we got about 200 respondents for each segment, and it's our intention to update this survey every 6 months or so. So we're actually going to be starting to field another survey very, very shortly, and then we'll start to see some trending of these results over time. So some of you may know the Kelsey Group. The Kelsey Group built a practice around the piece of research that they did called the Local Commerce Monitor. We're intending to have this be structured a little bit similar to that. So we've got a research vehicle, and then we're going to wrap some analysis around it and some other things. Okay. So I'm going to use the word SaaS today quite a bit. Cloud-based services. Here's the types of companies that we're talking about when we're talking about cloud-based services. Okay. And some of these may be familiar names, some of them may be unfamiliar, okay? But many of these companies today are starting to do business with the SMB market in the States. And the other interesting thing here is that these companies have been the beneficiaries of a significant amount of venture capital from Silicon Valley. And so what we expect to see is that these companies behave very aggressively in the marketplace, look to expand their footprint very, very aggressively, And so with this practice, we intend to track the evolution of these companies as they grow and evolve and continue to offer more and more services over time. So that's a little bit of context around the survey vehicle and the types of companies that we're going to be talking about. Okay, so how do small businesses spend their day, right? Most small businesses got into business because they wanted to provide a service or a trade. They wanted to dye hair, they wanted to fix cars, what have you, and to build a business and to make profits, right? That's why people are in business. But the reality of the situation is that a very, very small percentage of their time is actually spent practicing their craft. So this is a data point from Intuit, and it states that a little over a third of an SMB's day is actually spent practicing their craft. Okay, a very, very small percentage of their time. The rest of their time is spent doing other stuff, right? They're working on payroll, they're working on marketing and advertising, they're doing the books, they're ordering supplies, okay? And so I would argue to you that this relatively small percentage of time that an that an owner actually spends practicing their craft is putting them at a competitive disadvantage relative to national brands that tend to offer more marketing capabilities and more technology to the table than an SMB does. More on that later. So again, I would argue that an SMB would rather be serving coffee to their customers, building a flower arrangement, practicing dentistry, and basically doing more of what they got into business to do in the first place. And so I think the question that's in front of us here today is, can these SMBs take advantage of technology that's available to help them get their time back, but also offer up services that are more competitive with national brands? So that's the question on the table. So most small businesses spend their time in really 4 key activities, right? And these 4 key activities haven't really changed much over the years. So it's, how do I manage my staff, right? So for an SMB, the staff is the face of the organization, and they're in a very, very important role because they want that customer experience with that consumer to be a really good experience. The staff is also generally the most expensive item in an SMB's business, so that's a very important area that they need to spend some time on. They also spend their time on their finances, right? In particular, who owes them money, and I would argue probably to a lesser extent to whom they owe money to. So that's the second function they spend their time on. Thirdly, and importantly, is how do they get new customers and how do they retain their best customers? So how do they leverage search marketing? How do they leverage social media? How do they leverage email marketing to help them find the best customers and retain those best customers? And then finally, supplies. For many businesses, the supply chain is a critical aspect of the business. Think about a dentist practice without Novocaine or a tire dealer without tires. That business is going to be in trouble unless they're managing their supply chain very, very carefully. So here are those 4 areas on a really simple grid, okay? And at the center of that grid, is or should be, customer relationship management. So CRM, should be at the center of everything that an SMB does. And so remember back to one of the initial slides that I presented in terms of the overview of the piece of research. We did it across 5 relatively broad verticals. We asked questions across those 5 broad categories, across these 5 operating areas of an SMB's business. Okay, so that's the cross-section of information that we've been collecting. So here's an interesting quote that provides a little bit of a different angle on what some motivations of an SMB might be in terms of adopting cloud services. So I'll give you a second to digest this quote. It comes from the Chief Marketing Officer of DexYP, Gordon Henry, and he's saying, these small businesses are getting Starbucks and Amazon and Domino to death. So these national brands that tend to offer a stronger set of marketing capabilities and technology, in many cases have a competitive advantage over SMBs that don't. And so here's a case in point. Now I'm not a Domino's pizza guy. Anybody here, think Domino's is a great pizza? Like nobody thinks Domino's is a great pizza, right? I mean, so what Domino's has tried to do here is really focus on convenience, and they've developed this thing called the Zero Clicks app. And again, I haven't downloaded it, but from what I've read, once you download the app and once you put in your billing information and your preferences, you literally all you have to do is open the app and it orders the pizza for you. And it tells you where that pizza is in the process of where it's being made, okay? You can pick it up or you can have it delivered. If you're having it delivered, you know where that driver is, just like an Uber situation, right? So in terms of convenience, right, that's really hard for an SMB to beat. Now, if you're a local independent pizzeria guy in a market, how do you compete with that? So there's some apps that are starting to be built, like Slice in the pizza category and Shopify in the retail category. But let's face it, competing with that kind of technological capability is a bit of an uphill climb. Okay, so here's the first look at a data point from our survey. And I should begin by saying that out of the 1,000 companies that we talked to, 63% of them, okay, almost 2/3, 63% of those SMBs had adopted some form of a cloud service for their business. Okay, so pretty meaningful adoption this early in the game. So of those 63% of the companies that have adopted some sort of a cloud-based service, the most prevalent operating function that they've installed these cloud services for is payroll and HR solutions. So that's where most of the activity has gone thus far, okay? And so here's a question that looks at intent to shift to cloud services. So which of the following operations do you intend to shift to the cloud or internet-based platform? And perhaps, as you might expect, customer relationship management is the next area that's going to get the most love, I guess, from these cloud-based services. And that's meaningful in the sense that CRM is really at the center of that SMB operating system. So we think that's an important characteristic for the adoption of cloud services down the road. This question gets at the timing of that shift to cloud-based services. And I know this is a little bit hard to read, but the green or yellow bar is they're going to adopt these services within 6 months. And the darker bar is they're going to adopt these services in the next 6 to 12 months. Okay, so across the board, from customer relationship management all the way over to marketing advertising, okay, literally 80% of these companies across the board intend to shift, some aspect of their business to a cloud-based service. 80% are going to shift something within a year, okay? So that's very, very meaningful intent on what SMBs plan to do with their business. So this question gets at some of the drivers of why they intend to shift to the cloud. And as you can see on the left, if you can read that, almost half said they did it because they want to save time. So think about one of the initial slides that we put up that only 34% of an SMB's business is actually spent practicing their craft. They want to get their time back, right? They want to get their time back so they can provide a more meaningful customer experience from start to finish. 34% said that they're easier to use, and 34% said that because they offer more capability. So again, they want a competitive advantage over their other SMB peers, but they also want to compete more effectively against national brands. I thought it was interesting in this particular question that only 20% of the respondents said they did it because they wanted to save money. Okay? They did it because they want to get their time back, and they did it because they want to provide a more meaningful customer experience, which at the end of the day, for an SMB, is really their competitive differentiator. And so for an SMB to try to, stitch together the apps and tools that they need to, help their business be more effective is virtually impossible. This is a mind-numbing chart of all the apps and tools that are out there in the marketplace in this local search ecosystem, right? So I think one of the things that I wanted to communicate today is that I think there is an opportunity for those of you in the room to try to pull together packages that are useful to small businesses, that are simple, that are integrated, that are reasonably priced, and that offer the functionality that an SMB would need. So they don't have to try to figure all this stuff out for themselves. Again, for them to sort of piece this together and stitch it together is expensive, and it's very, very hard to do. So I think there's an opportunity for those in the room to do just that. So building on that point, here's a question that looks at, I'll read this for you in case you can't read it. Thinking about how your company manages HR and payroll, finance and ops, supply chain management, CRM, and marketing services, which of the following represents your view? And I'm not sure what color that is, it's almost like a light orange, but 60% say that they would prefer to work with a single company. So they want to have one bill, one login, one dashboard. Okay, they don't want to have to work with multiple companies. 26% that they're trying to get best of breed across the board, but the majority say, make this simple for me, give me one process to go through, and that simplicity seems to be where the market is at this point. So here's another interesting question, and I think this is a bit of a challenge for those of you that are in the media business, okay? And again, this is a challenging question to ask, so I'm going to read it again for you. It says, if you were to consider purchasing services outside of the core service offering of a particular provider, from which would you be more likely to do so? So this is really asking about, would you purchase, let's say, payroll services from a media company, or would you be more inclined to purchase advertising services from a payroll company? And 62% said that they would be more inclined to purchase a sort of an unrelated service from a cloud-based company, not from a media company. So only 36% said that they would purchase, some different product from their media company. And so why is that, right? So I would argue that media companies, for the most part, have a credibility problem, right? They've been around a long time. They get bombarded with lots of different sales calls from other media organizations, whereas I think a lot of the relationship with these cloud companies is relatively new. Perhaps the installation that they've had with the cloud company works as it's intended to, and so perhaps they don't have the history that many SMBs have with with a media company, and so that's interesting. So and when you think about Dex YP, Dex Yellow Pages, Dex Yellow Pages is offering these tools under a totally different brand. So they're going to market as Thrive, right? So they're not going to market as a Yellow Pages company. They're going to market as a totally different company with a totally different brand that, in their view, gives them more license to offer these back office types of services. So I think that's an important consideration in terms of how you go to market, what channels you're using, what brand you're using to go to market. I think you're going to start to see some different brands materialize in the marketplace. So ultimately, the adoption of cloud services is really driven by the amount of mobile app usage, okay? And here we ask a question about the use of mobile apps in your business. 58% of the respondents said they're using some form of a mobile app in their business. So I think that bodes well to the adoption of cloud services down the road. As does the use of online scheduling tools. So 45% said they're starting to book customer appointments through online media now. So those two characteristics, I think, are indicative of where this shift is, and I think that's a positive indicator of the shift to the cloud. So many SMBs have not shifted to the cloud, and right now don't intend to. Remember I said earlier that 63% of the companies that responded in our survey had adopted some form of a cloud service. 37% haven't. And so why didn't the 37% adopt some form of a cloud service? They didn't because they're comfortable, doing what they have today. They say that the companies that they're currently working with are stable or well established. If it's not broken, don't fix it. So to me, that's a little bit of inertia. I was also interested to see, if you can read this down at the bottom, only 6% of the respondents said they haven't shifted because they've had a really negative experience with a cloud company. So it's always harder to sell into an environment that's been poisoned with a bad experience. But I think a very small percentage of SMBs have tried and failed with the cloud company. So, so I thought that was very interesting. So here's another interesting factoid that I think bodes for cloud adoption. So in the States, between the years 2011 and 2030, okay, that 20-year span, 10,000 Americans are going to turn 65 every day. Every day, 10,000 people turn 65. Right? So what happens, right? When people retire when they're 65, they're going to turn those businesses over to their children, perhaps. They're going to sell those businesses probably to somebody younger. And what I'll tell you in a second is that younger proprietors are more inclined to use technology than older ones are. I saw another stat the other day. It was really interesting. Assuming this trend continues, right? Assuming this is correct, this is a Pew Research data point. Three out of every 4 SMBs will be owned by a millennial by the year 2025, right? I have a millennial at home, and that's really scary. So 3/4, get that, 3/4 of every SMB in America by the year 2025 is going to be owned by a millennial. Right? So there's going to be a lot of turnover, a lot of businesses changing hands, over this 20-year period. And as these businesses start to get younger, their use of technology is, we believe, is going to increase. And so, one of the other data points that we got as part of this is what types of businesses indexed higher around cloud adoption. So as you probably would guess, right? Younger businesses that are less than 10 years old, 72% of them indexed very high to cloud adoption. They tended to have a little bit of scale, more than 10 employees. About 2/3 of them had, some decent scale. And most of them had a fairly broad suite of media that they used and allocated more money to digital media than did the laggards. And as you probably would expect, on the other side of the coin, the laggards tended to be older businesses using fewer media, and a much smaller percentage of their media spend went to digital media. So if you're offering this stuff, this gives you some insight on where the best prospects and worst prospects are likely to be. So here's our forecast for the market. We think the market right now is about $10 billion in size. Again, this is just an American number. I should have mentioned earlier, Kimberly and I have been talking about this particular initiative. I know she's looking at doing something in some European countries, which would be great, because that would give us the ability to sort of pool this data together, get more sample, more trending. I think that would be a great idea of collaboration between our two organizations. But anyway, so we're at $10 billion now in the States, growing to about $14 billion in the next 3 years. So by 2020, we expect the market to be about $14 billion. So I was presenting this data point to our board a couple of weeks ago, and one of the guys said, that's basically the size of the Yellow Pages business probably 10 years ago, right? So we think that this particular industry, and it's not a homogeneous industry like the Yellow Pages industry was, it's more of a heterogeneous industry, but we think it's going to be about the same size, about $14 billion. And so part of what we'll offer to subscribers of this is all sorts of different cuts to this. So how much of this by vertical, by geographic market. We think there's going to be some horizontal plays versus vertical plays. We think there's going to be some channel differences. So there's going to be lots of different ways that we can cut this forecast up once we get started. And so I said earlier that we think that the adoption of cloud services is going to be very, very disruptive. Here, it's a bold statement. We think the smartphones it's going to be as disruptive as the smartphone's impact has been on local search. Some of the stuff is already starting to happen, right? So now you've got the Royal Bank of Canada, right, offering search marketing services to their customers through Acquisio. So you got a bank, in the search business. You've got Square, which is a payments company, offering social media services, right? They're offering lending services. So, all these companies, right, that have got this venture money are going to be looking for adjacencies to increase their yield from these SMBs. And, all of these entities have different entry points into that SMB's business, right? A bank has a different entry point. You're going to see banks do stuff. You're going to see telcos do stuff. You're going to see cable companies do stuff. You're going to see hosting companies do stuff. You'll see media companies do stuff. So all of these entities with different entry points into these SMBs are going to be looking to grow their business. It's just capitalism, right? And the more they do that, and the better their relationships are with that SMB, the more success they're going to have. And so, one of the things that I wanted to really try to stress today is, from my perspective, one of the key differentiators, whether it's a B2B sale that you're selling to, to an SMB, or it's the SMB selling to their consumer, the key differentiator, I think, at the end of the day, is going to be that customer experience, right? And making that customer experience from start to finish, as great as it can be. And so whoever has the most meaningful relationship with that SMB, could be a bank, it could be a telco, it could be a media company, they're the ones that, in our view, are probably going to have a leg up in terms of increasing their share of wallet, with that SMB. So that's a bit of a scary concept, I think, if you're a media company. And the reason that, we were sort of excited to, get into this business is that, let's face it, our members are all media companies. And, we think that this is a trend that they need to be aware of because, there's going to be that competitive set, that they used to focus on is going to get much broader, over time. And so, like this slide says, it's all up for grabs. Nobody owns this, right now. But I think this is the time to really understand what this is all about. I'm not going to suggest that this is for everybody. It was very, very hard. We've done this. Kimberly and I have done this for a long time. It's very, very hard to shift from print to digital, right? Now some companies are shifting from print and digital to software. That's hard. That's going to be a tough putt. Not for the guy that shot 72, but this is going to be a tough putt. And it's not going to be easy. But this is the time to understand this. This is the time to ask questions and to form relationships and to think about strategically, is this something that you want to get into from an offensive perspective or from a defensive perspective? Because I would say that other companies are going to be trying to unseat you from different points of view, right? So this is the time to really get after it and understand what it's all about. So we're going to have an event around this. It's going to be in San Francisco on December 7th. Again, great opportunity to meet some folks. We're going to have some venture people there that are focused on the SMB space. A lot of the companies that I showed on that sort of cloud picture before. Square is going to be there. We've got a bunch of those companies coming in. We'll have some SMBs there in terms of what their experience has been with this and how they're thinking about all of this stuff. And like I said, we're excited about this because we think it's going to be the Wild West all over again. We really do. We think it's going to be a crazy couple of years as this stuff sorts itself out. And these companies put that venture capital to work to try to grow their businesses. So I think that's it, Paul. So hopefully that's been interesting.
Thank you, Nick. We've got time for some questions. I'm going to kick off with one because I'm going to quote something you said. You said only 36% of those surveyed would buy these added services from a media company. And you used Dex as your case study. and Dex still has over $1 billion tied up in print yellow pages. So how are they going to? What's their role going to become? They're going to have two sales forces. How are they doing it?
So Dex is not getting out of the leads business.
We can't hear. The mic's not on.
Should I go back to this?
Yeah.
No, it's not working again.
Yeah, so Dex is not, they're not abandoning the leads business. I think what Dex is, and let's face it, their product line is going to fill out over time. Dex is now doing listings management, they're doing some social media, they're still sort of, I would say, sort of front office centric with their Thrive product, but my sense is that they're going to start to get more and more into the back office and weave these together. I mean, and again, I'm not privy to anything special about Dex Media, but Dex Media, they're in the print yellow pages business. That print book is dying. Okay, so that main source of leads, that main source of profitable leads for them is going away quickly. And what else do they have? So now they're reselling other stuff at low margin, and they have lots of churn, right? And so they're saying that's like a death spiral. So what they want to do is they want to provide some stickiness to that offering. They want to provide something that has more predictability. And so I think what they're going to do, Paul, is just weave this together. The front office and the back office is going to get packaged together. And some of it's going to be self-serve, and some of it's going to be service-oriented. They're going to look to do other channels. They can't do all the stuff themselves. I think it begs the question, and I think you're sort of getting at a key thing that we're going to be watching for, and that's can a media sales force really execute this? Can they really pull this off? That's going to be an interesting question to watch.
Well, right? I think you also said it in your presentation. I think the winners are going to be those who can package this in such a way that it becomes easy for salespeople to sell, but more importantly, easier for customers to buy.
It's got to be simple. It's got to be integrated, right? It's got to be priced right, and it's got to have the right functionality. So I think Dex is a horizontal play. So it's going to be interesting to see. Somebody's going to do this for lawyers, right? Somebody's going to do this for home improvement, and they're going to do a vertical play. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Anyway, it's just I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, we have 5 minutes. Anyone have any questions from the floor, please? One at the back. Do we have microphones? Here we go.
You're making me get my exercise.
So thanks, great presentation. You talked about the local or the big media companies not being able to be effective or trusted by the small business to help them with cloud solutions. So given the massive consolidation amongst the YP players, particularly in the US, and that they've largely failed to transition from print to digital, kind of given the churn that they're experiencing, do they have a shot at this? Do they have a shot?
Do they have a shot? Well, I guess I would argue that they definitely don't have a shot if they stay on the path of offering your source of leads around print yellow, and then reselling somebody else's service with no margin is a death spiral. And so, I mean, I give Dex a lot of credit. I really do. I mean, it's a ballsy move. I think they've got a lot of work to do, as I said, in training the sales force to be able to execute against this. But I'm not sure what the other strategy is. And I'm not sure how else you can do this. Right? You got to have something that provides some degree of margin, and that has some degree of predictability to it, right? And so I think, at least from a strategy perspective, I think they're absolutely right. And I think one of the things we're going to try to get to, and maybe this is where your question is, one of the things we're going to try to get to with this practice is, really getting underneath of those who are really executing well in the market. What are they doing well? You know, what are the business models that are working well? What are the execution strategies that people are doing that are working well? And we're going to try to be able to bring that level of insight to, you know, to our members around what that looks like. So I think there's a lot of learnings there, but it's going to be interesting to watch. I honestly don't know the answer to your question.
Paul, I have a question here. By the way, if you haven't downloaded our app, please download our app and you can ask questions through the app. So the question is, who are the cloud-based service companies that are best positioned for the success? Is it a function of only the sales execution?
I don't think so because, well, there's I'm going to draw a blank on this a little, but there's 10 companies. There's Office 365, there's Square, there's Gusto. There's 10 companies that we've identified that have the most market share right now. So they're from all over the place. But a lot of these guys are going to market through partners. Technology is getting better and better. So that's the thing. I mean, technology is making so much simpler now that these add-on sales are just much easier to do.
And I think that's a question over here, and it's a really good point because we're looking at doing this research also here in Cinda and comparing it with some in the United States, and it's hard to get your head around, but it's there.
Hi, Nick. Thanks a lot for the presentation. I definitely agree, great market research. Thanks for that. However, I wonder if you could do some more research on how do SME actually select their cloud services today and in future. So who actually helps them to find the right cloud service for them, and how many attempts do they take to find the right solution?
Yeah, so I don't know the second part of your question, but I guess my point to the audience today is that SMBs are looking for help to try to package this together in a way that gives them the functionality that they need in a simple, integrated fashion. Okay? The SMB can't do that. It's very, very hard for them to do that. So I think you're seeing now onesies and twosies. You know, there's certain market leaders, like Gusto is a market leader for, you know, HR services and payroll. So they're picking off some SMB clients, but I think the market need is for somebody to stitch together a number of different things that are simple and integrated. That's my view. Yeah.
So simple and integrated is the key success factor. However, you told easy before that there are media companies heading targeting this market to tell everything. Software companies are just realizing that Apple are here as well. They are considering this market as well to provide SMEs
The best way to source their cloud services. And besides having the key success factors, which you mentioned, having an integrated solution, make it simple for SMEs, who from your perspective provides today the best practice with regards to having a service which packages all these different cloud services for SMEs in an integrated and super simple way that makes SMEs access this potential easily?
So we are, I don't think we've finished this yet, but within the next, it might even be done. We just did a white paper on this with Camillio, okay? So I think one company that has done this relatively effectively right now is Camillio. Now, there may be others, I'm probably not aware of all of them. But Camillio is one company that has packaged this together in a pretty interesting way. I believe they're working with Dex. But there's a white paper that we've done that's either, if it's ready now or it's going to be ready probably while this conference is going on, that I would encourage people to download to really understand sort of more about you know how to do this and what that looks like. So if you go to our website, it's thelsa.org. I think.
I think we're going to share this paper later. Danny, are you standing here?
Yeah.
We're gonna talk a little bit about this tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it done? Yeah. Is
Danny's going to talk about
Is the
this
white paper
tomorrow.
done?
Yes.
It's done? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So it may be up on our website Oh, are you gonna make it
Yeah, I think
available?
it's gonna be on our website,
Okay, good.
too.
Okay, so that's great.
To
So
our
I would,
website.
I would encourage you to read that. I think
Yeah.
that would be a good
It's a
place
good
to start.
start. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Neg.
Would you join us in thanking Neg Norton?